Sometimes the harsh winds of the frontier whisper the hardest truths. A man can lose everything to the land that promised him freedom. Bill, a weary cowboy with a heart stitched together from grit and dreams, found himself at a crossroads in a river-crossing settlement that was little more than a ghost town. With just a pittance of $99 in his pocket, he sought a fresh start, but was met with the silence of abandoned dreams and crumbling facades. At his side stood Roger, a German shepherd whose loyalty was as steadfast as the mountains looming in the distance. Together, they were a ragged pair, but Bill felt the weight of hope as they trudged through the dusty streets, searching for purpose among the shadows of what once was. Yet as twilight descended, the shadows seemed to awaken, slinking along the walls of the dilapidated buildings, flickering like whispers in the night. It was in that eerie moment, beneath the watchful gaze of the stars, that Bill caught sight of something inexplicable, a fleeting form that danced just beyond the edge of his vision. Shadows twisted and writhed, playing tricks on his weary mind, hinting at secrets buried deep within the town's bones. What had begun as a simple quest for a new life now hinted at a deeper mystery, one that pulled at the edges of his sanity. What were these shadows that lurked in the forgotten corners of the town? And what truths lay buried beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed? Buckle up, because this is just the beginning of Bill and Roger's haunting journey. Where are you listening from, and are you ready to uncover the darkness that waits in the heart of the West? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the abandoned settlement of Rivercross. Dust swirled in the hot air, dancing like restless spirits among the sagging buildings and crumbling fences. Bill dismounted from his horse, the old paint named Rusty, and felt the familiar weight of unease settle in his gut. He could smell the dry earth and the lingering scent of something else, something that didn't belong. Roger, his loyal German shepherd, stayed close. The animal's ears perked as if tuned to a frequency only he could hear. "Keep your nose clean, boy," Bill muttered, scratching behind Roger's ears. The dog's brown eyes shone with intelligence, and he tilted his head as if weighing his master's words. Bill had seen enough trouble in his years on the range to know that a dog like Roger could sense things a man couldn't. "Let's get to it, eh?" As they moved deeper into the ghost town, Bill's boots crunched on gravel and broken glass, the remnants of lives long abandoned. Weather-beaten structures leaned against one another like weary travelers seeking solace. A faded sign creaked overhead, the letters barely legible. "Welcome to Rivercross, a town for all." Bill couldn't help but scoff. "All my foot," he muttered, glancing at Roger, who sniffed the air, nose twitching as if catching a whiff of history. They ambled past a decrepit saloon, its doors hanging askew. Bill peered inside, half expecting to see an old poker game still in play, but the darkness inside was as thick as the stillness of the grave. "Nothing but shadows in there," he said, stepping back and shaking his head. "Ain't no life left here, Roger, just bones and whispers." Roger barked softly, his hackles rising as he fixed his gaze on the far wall of the saloon. Bill's brow furrowed. "What's got your tail in a twist, boy?" The dog trotted forward, his movements cautious yet alert, and Bill followed, curiosity piqued. They stepped inside the saloon, where the air was stale, heavy with the scent of rotting wood and something more ethereal, like the remnants of dreams long forgotten. Sunlight filtered through cracked windows, casting an eerie glow that painted the walls with a kaleidoscope of shadows. Suddenly, Bill caught sight of movement at the edge of his vision. Something dark and fleeting darting across the wall behind the bar. He blinked, trying to shake off the feeling that his mind was playing tricks on him. "You see that, Roger?" The dog growled low, teeth bared slightly, his body tense. Bill's heart quickened, and a shiver ran down his spine. "It's just the light. Ain't nothing but the light." He stepped further into the dimness, determination gripping him like a vice. "What's a ghost town without a ghost after all?" As he approached the bar, the shadows shifted again, almost as if they were alive, writhing in a dance that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. Bill reached for his pocket, feeling the reassuring weight of his trusty Colt. "If you're looking for trouble, you best show yourself," he called out, his voice steady despite the fluttering in his gut. "I ain't afraid of shadows, but I reckon I've seen enough to know when something's off." Roger's growl intensified, and Bill turned just in time to see the shadows coalesce, forming vague shapes that seemed to twist and turn against the wooden paneling. "Now that's a sight I didn't reckon on seeing," he breathed, his heart hammering in his chest. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back room, as if a chair had been overturned. Bill's instincts kicked in, and he motioned for Roger to stay close. "Let's check it out, partner," he whispered, his voice low but steady. They edged toward the doorway leading into the back, where the shadows seemed to grow darker, swirling with an ominous energy that prickled the hair on Bill's arms. The air grew colder as they stepped through the threshold. The floor creaked beneath Bill's boots, and Roger moved cautiously, his eyes darting about as if he were deciphering a secret language that Bill could not grasp. Bill squinted into the gloom, the dim light revealing old crates stacked haphazardly and cobwebs that hung like curtains in the corners. Then, amidst the decay and neglect, he spotted a flicker of movement, a shadow, deeper than the others, pulling away from the wall as if it had a mind of its own. Bill's breath caught in his throat. "What in tarnation?" he muttered, rooted to the spot as he felt the chill of 1,000 unspoken stories wrap around him. In that moment, Roger let out a sharp bark, breaking the stillness that hung heavy in the air. The shadow paused, then darted down the hallway like a wisp of smoke, leaving a trail of coldness in its wake. "Guess we ain't alone after all," Bill said, a mix of dread and intrigue bubbling within him. "You ready to go after that ghost, boy?" With a low whine, Roger nodded, a firm resolve in his stance. The shadows seemed to beckon them deeper into the heart of the town, where secrets lay buried beneath the dust. Bill took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead, knowing that some mysteries were best left untouched. But in a town like Rivercross, there was no turning back. Bill squared his shoulders, the old wooden door creaking ominously as he pushed it open wider, revealing a darkened corridor. The chill in the air thickened, wrapping around him like a serpent. Roger sniffed the ground, then lifted his head, ears perked, watching every flicker of shadow as they danced along the walls. "Stay close now, partner," Bill whispered, his voice low but steady, echoing softly against the walls. He stepped cautiously down the corridor, boots tapping softly against the worn floorboards, the sound swallowed by the oppressive silence. It felt as if the very air was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The hallway led to an archway, beyond which lay what once might have been a storeroom. Rusty nails jutted out from the wall like the crooked teeth of a long-dead beast, and the scent of mold mingled with something sharper, more acrid. Bill's hand instinctively rested on the butt of his Colt, a reflex born from years of surviving the unpredictable frontier. "Let's see what we can find," he murmured, crouching low to inspect a pile of old crates stacked haphazardly in one corner. The wood was warped and splintered, but with a little effort he pried one open. Inside lay a jumble of dusty bottles, some still sealed, their contents long gone. Among the detritus, however, something glimmered faintly, a silver pocket watch, its surface marred with age, but still catching the light. "Would you look at that?" Bill said, lifting the watch carefully, as if it might shatter at the slightest touch. "Ain't no dust on it neither." He flipped it open, revealing intricate engravings on the inside cover, but the face was cracked and frozen at a time long past. "Might belong to whoever used to run this joint," he mused, a mix of curiosity and unease creeping into his voice. "Or maybe it's the ghost's keepsake." Roger nudged Bill's leg, his nose twitching again as he turned his attention back toward the archway. The dog's keen senses had picked up something the human couldn't quite grasp. Bill felt a flicker of unease slide down his spine. "You hear something, boy?" he asked, following Roger's gaze down the corridor. Just then, a soft rustling emanated from the darkness, like whispers carried on the wind, sending a shiver through Bill. "Show yourself," he called out, voice steady, though his heart raced in his chest. "I ain't here to cause trouble, but I reckon it's time we had a little chat." The shadows shifted again, almost as if something was reluctant to reveal itself. Bill felt a pull, a beckoning from deeper within the building, but caution held him back. He glanced down at Roger, who stood firm, body tense, the dog's instincts sharper than his own. As if answering his unspoken question, Roger padded toward the far end of the hallway, his eyes locked on a door that lay slightly ajar. Bill followed, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The door creaked open at a mere nudge, revealing a room cloaked in deeper shadows, the air inside thick with dust and the weight of forgotten memories. "What do you reckon is in there?" Bill asked, though he knew he'd have to find out for himself. Roger stepped cautiously through the threshold, sniffing the air, and Bill moved right behind him, the hairs on his arms standing at attention. The room was small, with remnants of old furniture scattered about, a once proud desk, now reduced to a crooked skeleton, and an empty chair that looked as though it had waited decades for its occupant to return. Papers lay strewn across the floor, yellowed and brittle, words long since faded. Bill knelt to inspect them, heart racing at the thought of uncovering something vital. "Come on, boy," he urged Roger softly. "Help me find the truth in this mess." The dog's nose was already at work, sniffing out the corners of the room as Bill gathered the papers, squinting to decipher the delicate script. Most of the writing was illegible, but one page caught his eye, a scrawled note that read, "The treasure lies where the shadows dance, under the watchful eyes of the lost." "A treasure?" Bill murmured, excitement mingling with the chill in the air. "Now that's a curious thing to leave behind." He glanced around, trying to catch sight of what the note might be referring to. "Shadows dance, huh? Could be any old spot in this forsaken place." Roger suddenly froze, his ears perked up, and he began to bark, the sound reverberating off the walls like a clap of thunder. Bill's heart leapt into his throat. "What is it, boy? What do you see?" Before he could move, a distinct click echoed through the room, followed by the unmistakable sound of a latch being undone. Bill's breath caught in his throat as he turned just in time to see the door swing shut behind him. The darkness seemed to deepen, pressing in on him, and a feeling of dread washed over him like a cold wave. "Now, that ain't friendly," Bill said, gripping his Colt tighter. "You best show yourself, whoever you are." Roger's growl reverberated through the air, low and steady, as Bill felt the temperature drop even further. The shadows seemed to coalesce once more, forming a figure, a vague outline standing near the far wall, its presence both unsettling and strangely familiar. "Y'all can't be serious," he murmured, a mixture of defiance and fear coursing through him. "What do you want from us?" The figure flickered, a glimpse of something old and weary, eyes filled with a sorrow that transcended time. Bill's heart raced as he took a step forward, drawn in by the spectral presence, compelled by the weight of history that lingered in the air. In that moment, he knew he was facing something more than a ghost. He was staring into the very soul of Rivercross, a town that had forgotten its own name, lost among the shadows. The figure swayed like the last flicker of a campfire in the wind, its form defined by the darkness rather than illuminated by it. Bill's heart thundered in his chest, a wild stallion galloping through an open range. He steadied his breath, gripping the colt with a white-knuckled hand. "I ain't afraid of you," he declared, though he couldn't quite shake the tremor from his voice. "What's your business here?" The shadows seemed to hesitate, swirling like dust in a sudden breeze. Roger, ever the sentinel, moved closer to Bill, his low growl rumbling like distant thunder. The canine's instincts served as a reminder that whatever awaited them was not just an echo of the past. It was something alive, or perhaps undead, and it was not alone. "Come on, boy," Bill murmured, feeling the weight of his dog's presence. "We're in this together." He focused on the apparition, his mind racing through stories of old, tales of restless spirits and the secrets they guarded. "You want to tell me your tale?" "I got time to listen." The figure's shape flickered again, and for a heartbeat, Bill thought he saw the glint of a silver locket dangling from a spectral neck, catching the faint light as it swung. But then it vanished, slipping back into the recesses of the room. "Darn it," he muttered, frustration mounting. "Ain't that just like a ghost to play hard to get?" He turned to Roger, who was now sniffing the floorboards with an intensity that spoke volumes. "What do you smell, boy?" Bill crouched down, observing the dog's movements. Roger seemed to be focused on one particular spot, a patch of wood that creaked underfoot like an old man's joints. Bill followed his lead, tapping the surface lightly with his boot. A hollow sound resonated beneath. "Well, I'll be," he breathed, his curiosity piqued. "What have we here?" He knelt further, sweeping away the dust with his hands, revealing a rectangular outline, a trapdoor, its hinges rusted but still intact. "Time to see what's beneath this here ghost town," Bill said, a mixture of trepidation and excitement coursing through him. With a firm grip, he pried the door open, its creak echoing like a plaintive cry through the room. An inky darkness yawned below, and the musty smell of damp earth wafted up to greet him, mingled with the faintest hint of decay. "Stay close, Roger," he instructed, peering into the void. "I reckon we're not alone down there." The dog whined softly but stayed at Bill's side, his instincts sharp as a tack. With a lantern in one hand and his Colt in the other, Bill descended the creaking steps into the darkness below. The light flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, making the space feel alive. The cellar was small, the air thick with dust, and as he scanned the area, his eyes caught a glimpse of what seemed to be remnants of a long-abandoned storage room. Barrels tipped over, broken crates and cobwebs hanging like forgotten memories. "Seems folks had their fill of this place," Bill said to Roger, who was sniffing near a stack of old crates. "What do you think, boy? Any treasures hiding here?" The dog barked softly and turned his attention to a corner where the floor was stained darker than the surrounding boards. Bill moved closer, his heart thudding with anticipation. "What's that you found?" As he crouched to examine the area, he noticed a small, ornate box, its lid ajar, revealing a faded velvet lining. He pulled it out and gently opened it, the hinges protesting with a squeal. Inside lay a collection of tarnished silver coins, glimmering faintly even in the dim light. "Looks like I'm not the first fool to strike it rich here," he chuckled, feeling the weight of history in his hands. "But what's this?" Bill's gaze fell on a tiny scrap of paper nestled among the coins. He pulled it free, its edges crumbling, and unfolded it carefully. The handwriting was shaky, but legible. "The curse is real. The shadows will keep you unless the locket is returned." Bill's brows knitted together as he read the note again. "A curse?" he murmured. "Now, that's a tall tale if I ever heard one." He glanced at Roger, who was sniffing at the walls, his nose twitching with urgency. "You think the locket's that ghost's keepsake? We best find it before we're trapped like a rabbit in a snare." Roger barked, as if urging Bill on, and the man felt a surge of determination. He tucked the coins into his pocket and climbed back up the stairs, feeling the weight of the note pressing down on him. "Let's find that locket, partner," he said to Roger, who wagged his tail, ready for the next leg of their journey. As they returned to the room above, the air felt heavier, the shadows deeper. Bill could almost hear the whispers of the town's past echoing through the walls, warning him of dangers yet unseen. He scanned the room, searching for any sign of the locket, feeling the unseen eyes of the lost, watching him intently. "What do you reckon it looks like?" he asked Roger, who sniffed around the desk, a low growl rumbling from his throat. "Guess it's time to start poking around," Bill said, his voice steadying as he moved toward the remnants of the desk. He began to sift through the old papers, pushing aside dust-laden sheets that felt like the weight of years pressing down on him. Maybe the old-timers left a clue or two behind. A flicker of movement caught his eye, and he turned sharply to see the figure again, more defined this time, a woman with a sorrowful expression, dressed in garments of another age. Her eyes were locked on him, pleading yet fierce. "Find it," she whispered, her voice as fragile as a spider's web, "before the shadows take you too." Bill's breath caught and he nodded, adrenaline rushing through his veins. "We'll find it, ma'am," he promised, feeling a newfound resolve coursing through him. "You can count on it." With Roger at his side, Bill felt the stakes rise, the mystery deepening. Together, they would uncover the secrets of Rivercross, unearthing treasures of the past and confronting the shadows that danced just beyond the veil of the living. Time was of the essence, and Bill could sense that the town's secrets were ready to be revealed. The shadows flickered like restless spirits, and Bill felt the weight of the woman's plea settle in his chest. He could still see her face, ethereal yet urgent, urging him to act. With Roger close at his heels, he resumed his search, determined to unearth the secrets buried beneath the dust and decay of Rivercross. "Let's see what's left of this desk, shall we?" he muttered, kneeling to inspect the worn wood, its surface pockmarked and splintered. Bill carefully pushed aside the remnants of yellowed papers, their contents faded, but still holding the whispers of a long-gone era. Ain't no use being shy now. As he rifled through the debris, he noticed a drawer, its handle missing but still hanging by a thread. Bill yanked it open with a firm tug, revealing a jumble of odds and ends, a rusted compass, a broken pocket watch, and a tattered journal, its cover peeling like the bark of an old tree. "Now this might just hold something," he said, his fingers gently brushing the cover before he opened it, the pages crackling like dry leaves in autumn. Roger circled around him, nose to the ground, sniffing for any hint of the locket or the woman's presence. The dog's instincts were sharper than a rattlesnake's fangs, and Bill knew better than to underestimate his companion. "What do you smell, boy?" he asked, glancing up from the journal. The dog stopped abruptly, ears perked, staring toward a corner of the room where the shadows lingered thicker than elsewhere. Bill turned his attention back to the journal, his curiosity piqued. The handwriting was uneven, as if the author had been in a hurry. Flipping through the pages, he caught snippets of stories filled with misfortune and tragedy, tales of mining claims lost and families torn apart. But one entry snagged his attention, dated just before the town had been abandoned. The old locket rests beneath the roots of the willow by the creek. The spirits guard it, restless and seeking. Beneath the roots of a willow tree? Bill mused aloud, excitement dancing in his veins. "That's not too far from here. We ought to head out, Roger." He felt the pull of destiny, as if the town itself were directing his steps. He tucked the journal into his pocket, knowing it would serve as a guide to unravel the web of Rivercross's past. With a determined nod, he turned toward the door. "Come on, partner. We got us a locket to find." As he stepped outside, the air felt cooler, the sky a tapestry of deep blues and purples, dusk settling over the forgotten town like a quilt. The silhouettes of the abandoned buildings loomed against the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows that whispered secrets of their own. As they made their way toward the creek, Bill's heart raced with anticipation, the weight of the unknown pulling at his mind. "I reckon we're not just hunting for a trinket, but for a chance to set some spirits free," he mused aloud. Roger trotted beside him, his nose low to the ground, leading the way with an uncanny instinct that seemed to guide them through the thickening twilight. Upon reaching the creek, Bill spotted the old willow, its gnarled roots twisting into the earth like the fingers of a long-forgotten giant. "There it is," he breathed, nodding at the tree. "Let's see if the shadows are as protective as the woman warned." Kneeling beside the roots, he began to dig gently, the cool earth crumbling beneath his fingers. Roger remained alert, scanning the surroundings, his ears twitching at every rustle of leaves or croak of a distant frog. The night was alive, the sounds of the wilderness wrapping around them like a blanket, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air, a feeling that they were not alone. Just as Bill unearthed a small metallic object, a chill swept through the air, causing him to pause. The hair on the back of his neck prickled, and he glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see the woman's apparition hovering nearby. But all he saw was Roger, his stance tense, hackles raised, growling softly as he stared into the growing darkness. "Easy, boy," Bill whispered, his heart pounding. He carefully brushed the dirt off the object, revealing a locket, tarnished yet ornate, its surface engraved with intricate designs. "Well, would you look at that?" He opened the locket, revealing faded portraits of a man and a woman, their faces forever trapped in time. An image of the woman from earlier flitted through Bill's mind, and he felt an eerie connection. "This must be it," he breathed, holding it up to the waning light. "I reckon we found what we came for." But before he could fully comprehend the weight of the moment, the air thickened and an ominous silence enveloped them. The shadows seemed to shift, swirling like smoke, and Bill felt a cold breath on the back of his neck. "Roger, stay sharp," he warned, heart racing. Then came the whisper, soft yet unmistakable, curling around them like tendrils of fog. "Return what was taken, or be taken in return." Bill's grip tightened on the locket, his resolve hardening. "I reckon we're in for a rough ride, but I ain't about to back down." He looked down at Roger, whose keen eyes reflected the lantern's flickering light. "Let's get this back where it belongs, partner." We're fixin' to set things right." With that, Bill turned back toward the heart of Rivercross, the weight of the locket in his pocket and the shadows trailing behind him, a dark reminder of the town's lingering mysteries and the restless spirits longing for peace. The moon hung high and bright, casting a silver glow over the remains of Rivercross, turning the town into a dreamscape filled with shadows and half-seen shapes. Bill moved cautiously, his boots crunching over gravel and broken glass that littered the street, the locket heavy in his pocket like a stone, weighing down his resolve. He could feel the eyes of the past upon him, watching and waiting, as if the very essence of Rivercross was holding its breath. "Come on, Roger," he whispered, glancing down at the dog, who was leading the way with a steady gait, sniffing the air as if it were imbued with secrets waiting to be unveiled. The dog's ears perked up at every creak of wood and rustle of leaves, the faithful companion attuned to the unseen forces at play. "We gotta find out more about this locket and what it means to those spirits." They wandered deeper into the heart of the town, passing the skeletal remains of what was once a bustling saloon, the sign swinging in the gentle breeze, creaking like a ghostly lament. Bill paused, studying the weathered wood and shattered glass, trying to imagine the laughter and rowdiness that had filled the air long ago. "This place had life once," he said to Roger, who was sniffing at a nearby post, his tail wagging cautiously. "Now it's just a memory." "Look here, boy," Bill continued, moving toward the remnants of a small general store. He noticed a faded sign advertising groceries and sundries. With a quick sweep of his hand, he brushed away the layers of dust and cobwebs that had gathered over the years. Inside, the shelves were empty, but the floor was littered with old newspapers, yellowed with age. He bent down, sifting through the debris, hoping to find something that could shed light on the locket's history. "Aha!" he exclaimed, pulling out a crumpled article dated nearly a century prior. The headline read, "Tragedy Strikes Rivercross. Miners Lost in Cave Inn. Today." His eyes scanned the text, detailing a mining accident that had claimed the lives of several men, leaving behind grieving families. "This must have been when the town started to turn sour," he muttered. "Bad luck one after another, like a chain of sorrow." Roger padded closer, nudging Bill's hand with his snout, urging him to move on. The dog's instincts were sharper than any man's, and Bill felt the urgency of their quest weigh on him. "You're right, boy. We can't linger too long. Let's find more clues." They made their way to the old church at the edge of town, a structure that still stood tall, though its paint had long since peeled away. The steeple loomed against the night sky, a sentinel guarding the souls of the departed. As they approached, a gust of wind howled through the cracks, sending a shiver down Bill's spine. "Feels like this place is breathing heavy, don't it?" he remarked, his voice barely above a whisper. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the scent of mildew. Bill's lantern flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls, where faded murals of saints seemed to watch over the forsaken pews. "If there's any knowledge to be found, it might be in the records," he said, moving toward a small altar where an old wooden box sat. It looked as though it had seen better days, but it still held promise. He opened the box with care, revealing stacks of fragile papers and ledgers. As he rifled through the contents, he unearthed a baptismal record, the ink barely legible. "Here we go. Names of families that used to live here." He read aloud, "Smith, Jenkins, Rodriguez. All these folks connected to the town. But where does that leave us with the locket?" Roger was sniffing around the altar, his keen nose working overtime. Suddenly, the dog's growl turned into a low whine, his body tense as he backed away, ears flat against his head. Bill's heart raced. "What is it, boy? What do you see?" The air seemed to thicken, a presence settling in around them, heavy and oppressive. "I reckon we might be stirring something up," Bill said, unease creeping into his voice. Just then, the lantern flickered violently, plunging them into near darkness for a heartbeat. The shadows on the wall warped and twisted, as if alive, and Bill felt the weight of unseen eyes piercing through the gloom. "Roger, stay close," he whispered, feeling the instinctual urge to flee. But something compelled him to stay, to face whatever had stirred from the depths of Rivercross. "We're close to unraveling this tale. I can feel it in my bones." The air shifted again, and a whisper, clearer this time, echoed through the church, sending goosebumps racing along Bill's arms. "Return what was taken." It was the same voice, but now it felt more urgent, almost pleading. With a shaky breath, Bill turned to Roger. "We need to find a way to return the locket," he said, his voice steadying. "But first, let's see if there are more secrets buried in this place." He rummaged through the remaining papers, hoping to find a clue about the locket's origins or the spirits it belonged to. Just as he was about to give in to despair, a folded piece of parchment caught his eye. He carefully opened it, revealing a map, an old hand-drawn rendering of Rivercross, with markings that indicated places of interest: the church, the mine, and a small, ominously labeled spot near the creek. "Now, this could be something," Bill murmured, tracing the ink with a finger. "If this map's true, there might be more to find near the old mine. We ought to check it out before the night swallows us whole." With renewed determination, he tucked the map into his pocket, keeping a firm grip on the locket. He could feel the spirits of Rivercross tightening around him, eager for resolution. As they stepped back outside, the moonlight bathed the town in ethereal light, illuminating their path. "Let's get to the mine, Roger," he said, his heart thundering in his chest. "The sooner we figure this out, the sooner we can put the past to rest." With Roger at his side, Bill ventured into the deepening night, where secrets and shadows awaited, ready to reveal the truth of Rivercross. The cool night air wrapped around Bill and Roger as they left the church, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick dust on the ground. The moon hung high, a pale coin in the sky, casting long shadows that danced along the remnants of Rivercross. Bill's heart thrummed in rhythm with the pulse of the night, each beat urging him toward the mine marked on the map. "Let's make haste, Roger," he murmured, squinting toward the jagged outline of the mountains that bordered the town. The mine lay in the foothills, a place where whispers of gold and ghost stories mingled. It was said that those who ventured there could hear the echoes of the miners who once toiled, their laughter and toil now reduced to mere memories. As they walked, Bill kept a wary eye on the periphery of the moonlit path, the shadows stretching and shifting like restless spirits. "This town's got a way of breathing," he remarked, glancing down at Roger, who kept his nose low to the ground, sniffing the air as if trying to catch the scent of the past. "You ever notice that? Feels like it's watching us." Roger lifted his head, his ears perked, and Bill felt a tingle of unease. "You sense something, boy?" he asked, though he knew the answer. The dog's instincts were sharper than any man's, and Roger's demeanor spoke volumes. With a determined stride, they reached the mine entrance, a gaping maw in the side of the hill. Old wooden beams jutted out like broken teeth, and the ground was littered with stones that had tumbled from the structure. The air smelled of earth and decay, a scent that mingled with the faint metallic tang of iron. "Looks like it's been a spell since anyone's laid eyes on this place," Bill said, shining his lantern into the dark abyss. The light flickered, illuminating the rough-hewn walls lined with veins of ore that glimmered dully as if reluctant to reveal their secrets. "Can't say I'm feeling too welcome, but we gotta press on." Roger moved cautiously, sniffing around the entrance before stepping inside, his body low to the ground as if bracing for the unknown. Bill followed closely, keeping the lantern high. "Stay sharp, partner," he said, though he felt the weight of the locket in his pocket, a constant reminder of their purpose. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder, thickening with an oppressive silence that felt as if it could swallow them whole. Bill's heart raced, not just from the chill, but from the feeling of being watched. "You reckon those spirits are here?" he asked Roger, who paused to sniff a rock before continuing cautiously. In the far distance, a low rumble echoed through the tunnels, reverberating like a distant thunderstorm. "What in tarnation was that?" Bill whispered, gripping the lantern tighter. He felt a chill that had less to do with the temperature and more with an ancient dread that seeped into his bones. "Might be time to turn tail, but we ain't leaving until we find something." Pushing forward, Bill scanned the walls for any markings or signs that could point him in the right direction. He stopped short when he saw it, a series of initials carved into the rock, barely visible in the lantern light. "RJ," he read aloud, tracing the letters with his finger. "Roger Jenkins, perhaps. Could be a connection to the folks in town." Roger wagged his tail, seemingly encouraged by the discovery, and Bill's heart quickened. "If this is the work of a miner, we might be onto something big," he said, glancing around. "Let's keep our eyes peeled for anything else that might tell us more." Dukikin. They moved deeper into the mine, navigating around sharp rocks and narrow passages until they stumbled upon a small chamber. The walls glimmered with flecks of gold that sparkled in the lantern light, but it was the sight of a rusted pickaxe propped against the wall that caught Bill's attention. "Now that's a relic if I ever saw one," he muttered, kneeling to examine it. "Could have belonged to old man Jenkins himself." Roger sniffed the pickaxe, his expression serious. Bill took a moment to ponder the implications. "Could be this was left behind when things went south for the town," he said, running a hand over the handle. "If that's the case, there might be more buried here than just ore." Suddenly, a faint rustling echoed through the chamber, and both Bill and Roger froze. The sound was too deliberate to be the wind. "What in the wild world?" Bill whispered, squinting into the darkness. The lantern flickered again, casting long shadows that twisted along the walls. "Easy, boy," he murmured, trying to calm Roger, who growled low in his throat. "Could be a critter, but it could also be something else." Before he could react further, a ghostly figure flickered into view, shimmering like a mirage. An old miner clad in tattered clothing with a solemn expression etched on his face. Bill's breath caught in his throat, and he felt Roger tense beside him. "Return what was taken," the apparition spoke, its voice echoing like the wind through the canyon, filled with sorrow and urgency. The words hung heavy in the air, and Bill's pulse quickened. "This town ain't at peace, and neither are you, stranger." I'm trying to help," Bill managed, his voice trembling as he took a cautious step forward. "We found the locket, but I don't know what it means." The miner's eyes glowed with a haunting light, and he pointed toward the depths of the mine, where shadows danced and whispered secrets. "Seek the heart of the stone. The truth lies within." With that, the apparition faded into the shadows, leaving behind a silence that felt almost sacred. Bill exchanged a look with Roger, whose alertness had turned into a cautious curiosity. "Well, I reckon that was something," Bill breathed, shaking off the chill of fear. "Looks like we got ourselves a mystery to unravel." Roger nudged Bill's hand, as if urging him to move. "Right, let's find that heart of stone," Bill said, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. With the weight of the locket in his pocket and the faint glow of the lantern guiding their way, they stepped deeper into the unknown, where the echoes of the past whispered promises of secrets yet to be uncovered. With the ghostly miner's words still echoing in his ears, Bill felt a blend of trepidation and resolve settle in his chest. The lantern flickered in the stifling darkness, casting eerie shadows that danced like phantoms across the rough-hewn walls. He could almost hear the whispers of the mine, tales of heartache and lost dreams woven into the very rock that surrounded him. Roger, ever alert, sniffed the ground, his keen senses picking up scents that were long past. The dog's ears perked up, and he nudged Bill forward as if to say, "Let's get on with it." "You got it, partner," Bill said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. With renewed determination, he stepped deeper into the mine, the light from the lantern illuminating fragments of history hidden in the darkness. "Now where would this heart of stone be?" he muttered, eyes scanning the cavern for any indication of where to go next. He recalled the miner's ghost, his hollow gaze filled with sorrow and the urgency in his voice. "What did you mean, old-timer? What's the truth that lies within?" Bill knelt down, examining the ground. The soil was dry and dusty, but there were signs of disturbance, tiny scuff marks and loose stones that indicated something had been moved recently. "Looks like we ain't the first ones to tread here," he murmured, running a hand over the uneven earth. "Might be there's others looking for answers too." Roger continued to sniff around, his instincts sharp as a tack. He moved towards a darker corner of the chamber, his tail stiffening. Bill followed, drawn by the dog's sudden alertness. As they approached, he noticed a small crevice in the wall, barely wide enough for a hand. "What do you think, Roger? A place to hide something?" Roger looked back at Bill, ears perked, then returned to sniffing at the crack, a low whine escaping his throat. "You've got a nose for trouble, don't you, boy?" Bill chuckled nervously, reaching out to brush away some of the dust. He could feel the coolness radiating from the stones, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the mine. With careful fingers, he wedged his hand into the crevice, feeling around the edges. His heart raced as he encountered something solid, something that felt distinctly out of place. He pulled it free, revealing a small, intricately carved stone, glimmering faintly even in the dim light. The stone was shaped like a heart, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to dance under his touch. "Now what do we have here?" Bill murmured, holding the stone up to the lantern's glow. "Could this be what the old miner meant?" Roger barked softly, tail wagging with excitement. Bill turned the heart in his hand, feeling an odd warmth emanating from it, as if it were alive with energy. "Ain't that something?" he breathed, his mind racing. "This must be connected to the town. Maybe it's got something to do with the locket, too." He glanced around, the silence pressing down on him like the weight of the world. "But what does it mean?" he pondered aloud. "Could it be a key, or maybe a charm? Whatever it is, I reckon we ought to find out before we're caught flat-footed by whatever else is lurking in these tunnels." The faint rumble from earlier echoed again, a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the very rock beneath their feet. Bill's heart thudded in his chest, and he felt a cold sweat bead at his brow. "Let's keep moving, Roger. I don't fancy sticking around to find out what's making that noise." They pressed on, deeper into the bowels of the mine, the flickering light of the lantern casting long shadows that danced with the rhythm of their footsteps. Bill's mind raced with questions, the heart-shaped stone heavy in his pocket as they navigated through narrow passages, their way illuminated only by the faint glow of the lantern. Eventually, they reached a larger chamber, the ceiling soaring high above them, where remnants of old wooden beams crisscrossed like the skeletal remains of a bygone era. The walls glimmered with flecks of gold, but it was the sight of another figure that made Bill's breath catch in his throat. This time, it was a woman, her form translucent and shimmering like the morning dew. She wore a long dress that floated around her, a sorrowful expression on her face as she gazed at Bill. "You seek the heart of the stone," she said, her voice soft, yet echoing as though it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken tales. Bill felt a chill creep up his spine. Are you here to help us?" he stammered, clutching the heart-shaped stone tightly. The woman nodded slowly, her gaze piercing through the darkness. "Return what was lost and peace shall follow. The town waits for its soul to be reclaimed." Roger growled softly beside him, sensing the tension that hung thick in the air. "What do you mean by lost?" Bill asked, his voice steady despite the fear thrumming through him. "The heart holds the key to memories forgotten," the woman replied, gesturing to the stone in his hand. "But beware, not all spirits are at peace. Some seek vengeance, while others long for closure." As her form began to fade, the last words hung in the air like a warning. "Find the truth before the shadows reclaim what is theirs." Bill felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. "We're not done yet, Roger," he said, determination hardening in his tone. "We've got a job to do, and I reckon the town is counting on us." With a newfound sense of purpose, Bill and Roger prepared to delve further into the mysteries of the mine, guided by the flickering lantern light and the echoes of spirits past, ready to confront whatever lay ahead in the darkness. With a firm grip on the heart-shaped stone, Bill stepped deeper into the cavernous chamber, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and something ancient, a mixture that seemed to whisper secrets long kept hidden. The shadows stretched and twisted around him, and even the flickering lantern cast a ghostly glow that made the walls appear alive with movement. Roger, ever vigilant, kept close by his side, his ears perked and nose twitching, ready to alert Bill to any danger lurking in the dark. "Stay sharp, boy," Bill murmured, his voice barely above a whisper as he scanned the area. "We might be stirring up more than just dust down here." He could feel the weight of the woman's words pressing on him like a blanket of foreboding. He turned to the far side of the chamber where the stone walls were covered in strange symbols similar to those etched on the heart. They glimmered faintly, almost beckoning him closer. "What in tarnation do you reckon these mean?" he said, kneeling down to examine them more closely. The carvings seemed to tell a story, a tale of love and loss woven into the very fabric of the rock. Roger stepped forward, sniffing at the ground where the symbols met the earth. Bill watched him, appreciating how the dog seemed to sense something deeper, something beyond the mere stone and dust. "You got a nose for the truth, don't you?" He chuckled softly, stroking Roger's fur. As he pressed his fingers against the carvings, a sudden chill swept through the air, causing the lantern flame to flicker violently. Bill straightened up, a shiver running down his spine. "Did you feel that, Roger?" he asked, his heart racing as he glanced around. "It's like the very walls are watching us." Roger barked low, his eyes focused on a darker corner of the chamber, where shadows danced more aggressively. Bill straightened, squinting into the gloom. "What is it, boy? Show me," he urged, following the direction of Roger's gaze. As he moved closer to the shadows, he could make out what appeared to be a small wooden chest, half buried in the dirt. Dust covered its surface, but it was not the markings of age that made Bill's heart race. It was the sight of a familiar emblem carved into the lid, the same heart shape he held in his pocket. "Now, ain't that interesting?" he said, kneeling down to dig it out. The chest was heavier than it looked, and the wood creaked ominously as he pulled it free. "What do you think is in here, partner?" he asked Roger, who sniffed at the chest, tail wagging nervously. "Only one way to find out," Bill said, his voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at his gut. He rummaged through his pack for a small crowbar he'd stashed away, a practical tool for a practical man. With a few careful pries, the chest creaked open, revealing an array of dusty trinkets and forgotten memories. "Goodness gracious," Bill breathed, lifting an old locket, tarnished yet still beautiful. The heart-shaped stone pulsed in his pocket, as if responding to its kin. "This here looks like it belonged to the woman we saw earlier." Roger let out a low whine, his gaze fixed on the locket. "You think so, boy?" Bill asked, a frown crossing his face as he turned the locket over in his hand. It was engraved with the same symbols that adorned the walls, and the thought of their connection sent a thrill of apprehension through him. "What are you trying to tell us?" As he opened the locket, a soft sigh filled the chamber, echoing off the stone walls like a ghostly whisper. Bill looked around, eyes wide, half expecting the spirit of the woman to appear again. Instead, he was met only by the heavy silence that enveloped them. Inside the locket was a portrait of a beautiful woman, her eyes bright and alive, a stark contrast to the ethereal figure they had encountered. "This must be her," Bill murmured, his heart aching with the weight of the story behind the image. "She was loved, and something happened that took her away from this world. We need to find out what happened to her." Roger nudged his leg, drawing Bill's attention back to the chest. Among the other items, he spotted a small, leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and worn. "Now, this looks like it might have some answers," he said, pulling it out with care. The pages were yellowed, but the ink remained legible. "Let's see what secrets you hold," he whispered, flipping through the pages. The journal was filled with notes and sketches, recounting tales of the town's heyday and the miners' hope for fortune. But one entry caught his eye, the handwriting frantic and shaky. "The heart must be returned to its rightful place, or darkness will rise to consume the living." Bill read aloud, his voice trailing off as he glanced at Roger. "Looks like we ain't the only ones who've been in search of answers." A low rumble reverberated through the mine, louder this time, shaking the ground beneath them. Bill shot a glance at Roger, whose fur bristled with alarm. "Time to skedaddle," Bill said, stashing the locket and journal into his pack. "Whatever is stirring down here ain't happy we've come sniffing around." Together they made for the exit, the shadows closing in as the echoes of the past grew louder, urging them to uncover the truth before it was too late. With the heart-shaped stone pulsing in rhythm with the pounding of his heart, Bill couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time and the town's forgotten spirits were waiting for their reckoning. Bill and Roger moved swiftly through the dim corridors of the mine, the flickering lantern casting shadows that danced like restless spirits along the walls. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something sour that clawed at the back of Bill's throat. He could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in on him, as if the very stones were alive and watching, hungry for the secrets he was trying to unearth. "Stay close, boy," he murmured, feeling the reassuring presence of Roger at his side. The dog's ears were perked up, alert to every little sound, every shift in the air. Bill could almost hear the thoughts racing through the creature's mind. Danger, warning, a primal instinct honed from years of companionship and adventure. The rumbling grew louder as they neared the entrance, vibrating through the stone like a distant thunder. Bill cursed under his breath, urgency driving him to quicken his pace. "We'll get out of here, Roger. Just a little further," he reassured the dog, even as he felt a tightening in his chest, an instinctive fear that something was amiss. They stepped into the light, the harsh sun spilling over the threshold like a welcoming embrace, but the warmth did little to ease the chill that had settled in Bill's bones. He paused for a moment, catching his breath and glancing back into the depths of the mine. There was a heavy silence now, the kind that felt like a promise of something sinister lurking just beyond the light. "Now, what do you reckon we do with all this?" he asked, patting the bulge of his pack, heavy with the journal and locket. "We can't just keep this to ourselves. That much I know." Roger tilted his head, ears flopping, as if he were pondering the weight of Bill's words. Bill turned his gaze to the ghost town sprawled before him, its crumbling buildings bathed in a golden glow, each one a testament to lives once lived and dreams once cherished. "We ought to head to town, see if we can find anyone who might know more about her." He pointed toward the saloon, its weathered sign creaking in the breeze, an old friend still standing after all these years. Maybe the barkeep's got a tale or two to share. With a nod of determination, they set off, the crunch of gravel underfoot echoing in the stillness. As they approached the saloon, Bill's heart thudded louder with every step. The wooden door swung open with a reluctant creak, revealing a dim interior filled with dust motes dancing lazily in the light, filtering through grimy windows. "Howdy, stranger," a voice called out, raspy and edged with curiosity. Bill turned to see an old man seated at the bar, a faded cowboy hat tipped back on his head, and a weathered face that spoke of years spent in the harsh sun. "What brings you to these parts?" "Ain't much left to see but old bones and broken dreams." "We're looking for stories, friend," Bill replied, approaching the bar. "Came across a piece of history back there in the mine, a locket belonging to a woman who once called this town home. Thought you might have some insight." The old man raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "A woman, you say? Well, now that's a tale worth telling. Name's Jed, by the way." He gestured for Bill to sit, sliding a weathered glass toward him, its contents a deep amber. "You'll want something strong if you're digging into the past, son." Bill accepted the drink, taking a cautious sip. It was smooth, but carried a bite that reminded him he was still very much alive. "What can you tell me about her?" he pressed, leaning forward. "Her name was Evelyn," Jed interrupted, his gaze turning distant, as if he could see the ghost of the woman floating in the very air around them. "Evelyn was the light of this town, a true beauty, both inside and out. Folks say she had a heart of gold, but it was that heart that led to her downfall. You see, there was a darkness settling in these parts long before the mine ran dry." Bill felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up, a cold breeze whispering through the open door, as if the very shadows were listening in. "What kind of darkness?" "Jealousy, greed, and betrayal," Jed replied, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. "The kind that can twist a man's soul and turn friends into foes. Evelyn caught the eye of a man named Silas, a miner who had more ambition than sense. He'd do anything to win her heart, but she was promised to another." Bill shifted in his seat, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to take shape. "What happened to her? What drove her away from this world?" Jed's face clouded with sorrow, his eyes glistening with memories long buried. "On the night of her engagement, there was a terrible storm. Folks say Silas went mad when he found out she had chosen another. It's said he confronted her out in the mine, and when the storm passed, she was gone, just vanished without a trace." Roger let out a low growl, sensing the heaviness in the air, the gravity of the tale weighing down the room. Bill's heart raced as he considered the implications. "You don't reckon she's still down there, do you?" "Some say she's trapped between this world and the next, waiting for her heart to be returned," Jed said, his voice trembling. "They say if you listen closely at night, you can hear her calling out, searching for her lost love." Bill felt the pulse of the heart-shaped stone in his pocket, thrumming in time with his heartbeat. "Well, I reckon we're not done here yet, partner," he said to Roger, determination settling in his bones like an old friend. "We need to go back, find out what truly happened to Evelyn, and maybe, just maybe, put her spirit to rest." The old man nodded solemnly, his gaze steady. "You watch yourself in there, son. Ghosts ain't always what they seem. and some secrets are best left buried. D. As Bill stood, a sense of purpose surged through him. I ain't scared of ghosts, Jed. I'm just trying to right a wrong. With Roger at his side, he stepped back into the sunlight, ready to face whatever awaited him in the shadows of the mine. They would find the truth, no matter how dark it might be, for Evelyn deserved to be remembered and her story needed to be told. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the ghost town as Bill and Roger made their way back towards the mine. The air was thick with anticipation, and the distant call of a hawk echoed against the canyon walls, reminding Bill of how small they were in the grand scheme of the frontier. He could feel the pulse of the heart-shaped stone in his pocket, a tangible connection to the mystery that awaited them. Stay sharp, Roger, Bill murmured, glancing down at his loyal dog. The hound's ears perked up, eyes bright and alert. He knew better than anyone that trouble often lurked in the dark corners of the world. Bill had trained him well, and if there was one thing he could count on, it was Roger's instincts. The mouth of the mine loomed ahead, a gaping maw of darkness that seemed to breathe in the fading light. Guess we're going back into the belly of the beast, Bill said, forcing a chuckle to ease the tension knotting in his stomach. He took a deep breath, the scent of damp earth and iron mingling in the cool evening air, and stepped inside. The faint glow of the lantern he carried flickered against the rough-hewn walls, illuminating the jagged rocks and the remnants of old wooden supports that had once held the mine together. Each step sent echoes bouncing back at him, as if the very walls were whispering secrets long forgotten. Roger trotted close by, his nose to the ground, sniffing for anything unusual. Stay close, boy, Bill cautioned, peering deeper into the shadows. We're looking for Evelyn, not just ghosts. He felt a shiver creep up his spine, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. It was one thing to hear tales of spirits and lost souls, but quite another to seek them out. They ventured further, past rusted tools and forgotten carts, remnants of lives once lived in the pursuit of fortune. Bill's heart raced as they approached a fork in the tunnel. To the left, a steep descent led into a deeper darkness, while the right veered toward a small alcove. Something in his gut told him to explore the alcove first. Let's see what we can find, he whispered, motioning for Roger to follow. As they entered the nook, the light of the lantern fell upon a tattered piece of fabric, clinging to a jagged rock like a ghost itself. Bill knelt down, brushing away the dust and grime. It was a scrap of a dress, a deep blue that spoke of elegance. Evelyn's? He wondered aloud. Roger began to whine softly, his body tense as he sniffed at the ground. Bill looked up, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. What is it, boy? The dog suddenly darted back toward the main tunnel, ears pinned back as if sensing something amiss. Bill scrambled to his feet, following Roger's lead. Hey, hold up, he called, quickening his pace. He could hear the growl building in Roger's throat, a low warning that sent a fresh wave of unease through him. They rounded the corner just in time to see a shadow flit across the far wall, a figure moving with a grace that belied its otherworldly nature. Bill's heart raced, and he felt the air grow thick and heavy, as if the very essence of the mine had come alive. "Show yourself!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the cavern. For a moment, there was silence, and then a soft, sorrowful sound drifted through the air, like a whispering breeze that spoke of longing and loss. Bill felt a chill crawl up his spine as he strained to see into the darkness. "Evelyn," he called, his voice softer now, as if speaking her name could coax her from the shadows. There was no answer, but the sensation of her presence lingered, heavy and poignant. "We're here to help you," he added, though he felt foolish for speaking to an empty mine. "We found something of yours." He reached into his pocket, pulling out the heart-shaped stone, its surface warm against his palm. As if in response, the lantern flickered violently, casting the alcove into stark relief. Bill's breath hitched as he saw something glimmer beneath a pile of rocks, another locket, identical to the one he had found earlier. He knelt again, carefully lifting the debris away, revealing the delicate piece of jewelry that seemed untouched by time. "Look at this, Roger," he said, holding it up for the dog to see. The locket was intricately designed, the surface etched with floral patterns that seemed to dance in the flickering light. This must be hers. He opened it carefully, revealing a faded photograph of a young woman with gentle eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest nights. A sudden gust of wind blew through the mine, extinguishing the lantern's flame in an instant. Darkness enveloped them, and the whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls as if the very mine were alive with the spirits of the past. Bill's heart pounded as he fumbled to relight the lantern, his hands shaking. Come on, he muttered, the fear clawing at him. Roger's low growl resonated in the dark, a steady reminder that they were not alone. At last, the flame flickered back to life, casting an ethereal glow that illuminated the alcove once more. In the dim light he could see her, a figure standing at the edge of the shadows, translucent and shimmering like a mirage. Bill's breath caught in his throat. "Evelyn," he breathed, hope igniting within him. The figure seemed to nod, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. As she stepped closer, the air grew warmer, and Bill felt an overwhelming urge to reach out. The locket in his hand pulsed with energy, drawing him toward her. "Please," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "We want to help you find peace." The air crackled with energy, and Bill felt the connection between them, a bond forged from the pain of lost love and longing. Roger, sensing the weight of the moment, remained at Bill's side, his eyes trained on the ghostly figure. Together, they stood at the crossroads of the past and present, ready to unearth the truth that had been buried in shadows for far too long. Bill stood, transfixed by the spectral figure before him, as though a thread of time had woven together past and present. The dim light flickered around Evelyn, revealing the ghostly contours of her form, a haunting beauty caught in an eternal moment of sorrow. She seemed as fragile as a dream, and yet there was a strength in her gaze that urged him to press on. "Evelyn, what happened to you?" he asked, feeling the weight of her unspoken story pressing down on him like a storm cloud ready to burst. The air around him shimmered with an almost palpable energy, as if the mine itself were listening, holding its breath in anticipation of revelations long buried. The spectre pointed toward the far wall of the alcove, her ethereal finger tracing an invisible line that seemed to pulse with an urgency. Bill followed her gaze, squinting into the shadows. The rocky surface was rough and unyielding, but as he moved closer, something caught his eye, an outline, faint but distinct, shaped like a doorframe. "Roger," Bill whispered, kneeling down to inspect the wall more closely. The dog, ever vigilant, sniffed at the ground, his ears perked as he sensed the shift in atmosphere. Bill traced the outline with his fingers, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath his touch. "There's something here. I reckon it's a secret passage." Roger barked softly, his tail wagging ever so slightly, as if encouraging Bill to dig deeper. The lantern flickered again, casting strange shadows that danced along the walls. Bill glanced back at Evelyn, whose face bore an expression that was both pained and hopeful. "I'll find it," he promised her, determination settling in his gut like a rock. He stood and pulled out his pickaxe, its handle worn from years of use. "Let's see what secrets this old mine holds." With deliberate swings, he began to chip away at the wall, his muscles straining as he worked against the stone. Dust flew into the air, swirling like tiny spirits caught in a whirlwind. Roger remained close, his instincts sharp, ears pricked, and eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of trouble. The sound of metal striking stone echoed in the alcove, reverberating off the walls like a heartbeat. Bill paused for a moment, wiping the sweat from his brow, and listened. The whispering had intensified, rising and falling like a haunting melody, almost beckoning him to continue. "Come on, Evelyn," he murmured. "I know you're trying to tell me something." With renewed vigor, he struck the wall again, and then again, until finally a chunk of rock broke loose and tumbled to the ground. He crouched down to inspect his work, revealing a narrow opening that led into darkness. The air that rushed out was stale, carrying with it a scent of damp earth and something sweeter, almost like lilacs, a scent that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "Looks like we found ourselves a way in," he said, peering into the abyss. The darkness yawned before him, but there was a pull, a magnetic draw that urged him forward. "What do you think, Roger? Should we go take in a gander?" The dog let out a low whine but stepped forward, his instincts sharp. He nudged Bill's hand with his nose, as if to say, "You lead and I'll follow." Bill grinned, heart racing, and felt a rush of gratitude for his loyal companion. With the lantern held high, Bill stepped into the narrow passage, the walls closing in around him like a tight embrace. The space was cramped, and he had to sidle along, the weight of the mine pressing down on him. The whispers grew louder, echoing off the walls, swirling around him like a tempest of forgotten voices. "Stay close, boy," he instructed, feeling the warmth of Roger's presence beside him. The path twisted and turned, and soon the lantern light illuminated another alcove, this one larger than the last. The sight that greeted him nearly stole his breath. In the center of the space lay an old wooden chest, its surface engraved with intricate designs of flowers and vines, the same patterns as the locket he had found earlier. "Now, what have we here?" he muttered, approaching it cautiously. Bill knelt beside the chest, running his fingers over the cool wood. The lock was rusty, but the craftsmanship was unmistakably fine. "It's a mighty fine piece, I'll give it that," he said, glancing back at Roger. "Just like Evelyn." With a deep breath, he pulled out his pickaxe again and began to pry at the lock. Each strike echoed like a hammer on a drum, and the whispers crescendoed, filling the air with a sense of urgency. "Almost there," he encouraged himself, sweat trickling down his brow. At last, with a final crack, the lock broke free, and Bill lifted the heavy lid. Dust billowed out, dancing in the lantern light, and as it settled, he peered inside. His heart raced as he caught sight of what lay within, an assortment of letters tied with a faded ribbon, their edges yellowed with age, and a small velvet pouch that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. "Evelyn," he breathed, reaching for the letters first. As he untied the ribbon, the whispers swelled, as if the very spirits of the mine were leaning in to hear the secrets of the past. Roger shifted beside him, ever alert, and Bill could feel the weight of their quest pressing down on his shoulders. "Let's uncover your story, shall we?" he murmured, and as he began to read the letters, the air around him thickened with anticipation, the past eager to spill its secrets into the light of day. Bill took a deep breath, the scent of aged paper and the faintest hint of lilacs wrapping around him like an old friend. He carefully unfolded the first letter, its surface rough beneath his fingertips. The spidery script danced across the page, swirling with emotion as he began to read aloud, his voice echoing softly in the hollow chamber. "Dearest Evelyn," he read, his heart quickening. "The nights grow longer, and I find myself haunted by dreams of you. Each morning I awake, the sun rises without your smile. I promise to return from this cursed place to hold you close once more." He glanced at Roger, who sat attentively, his ears perked and eyes sharp. The dog seemed to sense the weight of the moment, the air around them thick with both history and the unexplainable. Bill pressed on, the shadows flickering in the light of the lantern as he unfolded the next letter, the tremor in his voice betraying the gravity of what he was discovering. "Time passes like the wind through the pines, and I fear that if I do not speak my heart now, it may wither away like the flowers in winter. The spirits here, they are restless, and I believe they hold the key to our future, Evelyn. If I do not return..." The words faded as Bill's breath caught in his throat. "Spirits? What kind of spirits?" he murmured, looking at Roger, who let out a low growl, as if the tension had turned palpable in the cramped space. Bill could feel the weight of something unseen, watching him from the depths of the mine, a cold draft brushing against his skin. He turned his attention back to the letters, scanning them for more clues. The third letter bore a different tone, more frantic, the handwriting shaky. "The shadows grow darker, and I fear the spirits are angry. I have seen them moving amongst the rocks, whispering in a language I cannot understand. They seek something, but what? I must uncover their secret before it consumes me." As Bill read the last letter, he could almost hear the desperation in the writer's voice. "If you find this, my beloved, come quickly. There is treasure beneath the earth, but it is not gold or silver that the spirits desire. Beware the darkness, for it may claim you as it has claimed me." Bill's heart raced with a mixture of dread and excitement. "Treasure, huh? Just not the kind we're used to," he said, glancing sideways at Roger, whose nose twitched in the dusty air. Looks like we're not done yet, boy. We gotta find what these spirits are after. He reached into the chest again, his fingers brushing the small velvet pouch. It felt warm against his skin, pulsing with a rhythm that felt almost alive. He hesitated, the whispers rising in intensity, swirling around him, urging him to open it. With a gentle tug, he undid the drawstring, and the pouch spilled open, revealing a collection of small, gleaming stones, each one a different shade, some like fire, others like ice. "What in tarnation?" he breathed, leaning closer. The stones sparkled in the lantern light, each one giving off a strange energy that thrummed in the air. "These must be what the letter meant," he said, awe mingling with apprehension. "But what's their purpose?" Roger sniffed at the stones, his instincts firing as he backed away slightly, as if sensing the power held within. Bill chuckled softly. "Even you think they're strange, huh?" The dog's ears flicked back, his gaze darting toward the darker recesses of the mine. As if on cue, the whispers crescendoed into an almost deafening chorus, swirling around them like a tempest. Bill's heart raced as he stood, the lantern swinging slightly in his grasp. "We best keep moving, Roger. This may be the key to finding Evelyn's peace." The darkness beyond the alcove seemed to shift, shadows dancing along the walls like specters. Bill could feel the pull of the unknown, a primal instinct urging him to delve deeper into the mine. He tucked the pouch carefully into his pocket and turned to the winding passage ahead, the whispers guiding his steps. The air grew cooler, a chill creeping along his spine, and he felt Roger's body tense beside him. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, slowing his pace. The dog's gaze was fixed ahead, ears perked and low growls rumbling in his throat, as if he sensed something or someone lurking just beyond the reach of the lantern's glow. "Stay sharp," Bill warned, his voice a murmur echoing softly off the stone walls. He moved cautiously, each footfall careful and deliberate, the whispers now a murmur of anticipation. Just ahead, the passage opened into another larger chamber, the walls glistening with damp, as if the very rock was weeping. "Looks like we're not alone," he muttered, his instincts tingling. The lantern light flickered, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the stone. In the center of the chamber stood an altar of sorts, a flat slab of rock draped with layers of dust, but what caught his eye was the carving etched into the stone, a figure that resembled a woman, arms outstretched toward the heavens, surrounded by a halo of stars. Bill's breath caught as he recognized the shape, much like the locket he had found, but this was something far more ancient. Could this be Evelyn? He wondered aloud, stepping closer. As he reached out to touch the stone, a sudden gust of wind howled through the chamber, extinguishing the lantern's flame and plunging them into darkness. "Roger!" he called, feeling the dog press against his leg, warm and solid in the pitch black. The whispers grew louder, almost frenzied, as if the spirits had awakened and he could feel the electric charge in the air. The very walls seemed to pulse with energy, and Bill's heart thundered in his chest. In the darkness, he could hear the faintest echo of laughter, a child's laughter bright and innocent, contrasting sharply with the foreboding atmosphere. "What the—" Bill began, but the words caught in his throat as the whispers reached a fever pitch. "Evelyn!" he called out, the name tumbling from his lips like a prayer, but the only response was the sound of silence, thick and heavy, wrapping around them like a shroud. The anticipation was palpable, the very air electric with the unknown, and Bill felt an unwavering resolve to uncover the truth of this haunted place, for Evelyn, and for the secrets that lay beneath the earth. Bill stood frozen in the darkness, the oppressive quiet closing in around him like a thick fog. He felt Roger shift beside him, the dog's keen instincts making him alert to every sound, every whisper of the air. The echoes of laughter still reverberated in the shadows, haunting and sweet, and Bill strained to listen, half expecting the ghostly child to emerge from the gloom. "Darn it," he muttered, reaching for the matches tucked in his pocket, his fingers trembling slightly. The darkness felt alive, swirling with secrets waiting to be unearthed. He struck a match, the flame flickering to life and casting a warm glow that danced along the walls, revealing more of the intricate carvings that adorned the chamber. The figure of the woman was even clearer now, her outstretched arms almost pleading, as if beckoning him closer. "Easy, boy," he whispered to Roger, who had taken a cautious step forward, sniffing at the damp air with an intensity that suggested he sensed something more than just the chill. "Let's see what we can find out about you, Evelyn." The match flickered, and he glanced down at the altar. A small depression in the stone caught his eye, a shallow basin that seemed to be crafted for something, perhaps a vessel of sorts. With a careful hand, Bill brushed away the dust, revealing a smooth, circular surface beneath. It felt cool against his palm, and he could almost hear the whispers urging him on. "What do you reckon, Roger? You think this is where they kept offerings?" Bill mused aloud, his voice low, almost reverent. The dog tilted his head, eyes bright with understanding, as if he were privy to the unspoken mysteries of the past. With another match struck, Bill's eyes widened. Scattered around the basin lay remnants of what looked like old trinkets, pieces of jewelry, tarnished coins, and strange symbols carved into small stones. He picked one up, a rough-hewn piece that resembled the same shape as the pouch he had found earlier. "Mighty peculiar," he whispered, turning it over in his fingers. "Maybe this is what they were after. Could have been offerings to the spirits." The match flickered dangerously low, and Bill hurriedly placed the trinket back down, his mind racing with possibilities. What if these items were the key to understanding the town's tragic history? He had to uncover the truth, not just for himself, but for the souls that seemed to linger in the shadows, seeking peace. "Let's keep looking," he said, his voice firm as he peered into the dark corners of the chamber. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, something sweet, yet sharp, like the scent of wildflowers mixed with the mustiness of the mine. Bill took a deep breath and moved cautiously deeper into the chamber, Roger at his side, a sentinel in the dark. As they stepped further in, the whispers morphed again, this time forming more distinct sounds. A chorus of longing, sorrow, and something that felt like hope. Bill's pulse quickened, each beat echoing in time with the whispers. "What are you trying to tell us?" he murmured, half expecting a response. Suddenly Roger halted, his body rigid, as he stared toward a narrow passage that led off the chamber. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, following the dog's gaze. A chill washed over him, a prickling sensation creeping up his spine. The passage seemed darker than the rest, the shadows deeper, as if they were hiding something terrible. With a deep breath, Bill decided to investigate. "Let's go see what's down that way," he said, taking the lead. The match in his hand was nearly spent, casting a flickering light that barely reached the mouth of the passage. The whispers grew softer, almost hesitant, as if they were warning him to turn back. Roger moved ahead, his nose twitching, and Bill followed closely, his heart pounding in his chest. The walls of the passage were rough-hewn, and he could feel the moisture seeping from the stones, a reminder of the mine's long-forgotten purpose. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered, but he pressed on, curiosity propelling him. As they turned the corner, the passage opened up again, leading into a small cavern. Bill's breath caught in his throat at the sight before him. The walls were adorned with ancient drawings, etched deeply into the rock, depicting scenes of life and death, harvest and sacrifice. Among them, he recognized the figure of the woman again, her arms raised high, surrounded by a swirling mass of stars and celestial bodies. "Looks like this is where the real magic happened," Bill said, awe creeping into his voice. The air hummed with an energy that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. "Roger, keep your wits about you. We don't know what we're walking into." As he examined the drawings, a soft glow began to emanate from the far wall, illuminating a section of the rock. Bill squinted, the light growing brighter, and as he stepped closer, he realized it came from a small crevice lined with shimmering stones, much like the ones from the pouch. "Now what in tarnation?" he breathed, his heart racing. The stones pulsed softly, responding to his presence as if alive with their own heartbeat. He reached out, his fingers grazing the surface, and the moment he touched one, the cavern erupted in a kaleidoscope of colors, swirling like a tempest. Bill stumbled back, eyes wide with astonishment, while Roger barked, his voice echoing against the stone walls. The whispers rose again, now a symphony of voices, pleading and rejoicing all at once. "Evelyn!" he shouted, the name carrying through the air as he fought to regain his balance. The light intensified, casting shadows that danced wildly across the cavern. Bill felt a warmth envelop him, an embrace of the past, the stories of those who had once walked these halls. "What do you want from us?" he called out, the question hanging heavy in the charged air. In response, the light flickered, and for a brief moment he saw her, a spectral figure standing among the shadows, her face a mixture of sorrow and hope. Bill's heart soared, and he felt Roger lean against him, a steady presence in the midst of the supernatural storm. "Help me find peace," she whispered, the sound echoing like a distant memory. The light dimmed, leaving only the faint glow of the stones, and Bill stood frozen, understanding washing over him like a tide. He had to piece together the fragments of this story to uncover the truth of Evelyn's fate and the spirits bound to this place. "We'll help you, I swear it," he vowed, determination igniting in his chest. With Roger by his side, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, to unearth the secrets of this haunted town and bring solace to the souls that lingered in the shadows. The cavern was alive with energy, a thrumming pulse that seemed to resonate with Bill's very soul. He took a breath, steadying himself as the spectral image of Evelyn faded, leaving only the faintest trace of her sorrow behind. "We'll help you," he murmured again, clenching his fists in determination. "But first, we gotta figure out what happened to you." Bill turned back to the glowing stones, their luminescence casting an ethereal light across the cavern. Each stone seemed to whisper secrets, tales of a bygone era when the town had thrived with laughter and life. The air felt thick with history, and as he stepped closer to the shimmering pile, he could feel the weight of the past pressing down on him. "Let's see what we can dig up," he said, glancing at Roger, who was sniffing the air, his ears perked and alert. The dog seemed to sense something more than Bill could, a presence that lingered just outside the reach of the flickering light. With careful movements, Bill began to gather the stones, each one warm to the touch, the glow pulsing like a heartbeat in his palm. He placed them into the pouch he had found earlier, feeling their energy mingle with his own. "There's got to be a connection here," he muttered, recalling the drawings that lined the walls. "Evelyn was tied to this place, and I reckon these stones are part of her story." As he continued to collect the stones, a chill crept back into the air, and the whispers returned, swirling around him like a restless wind. Roger barked softly, his gaze fixed on a darker corner of the cavern. Bill's heart raced again, a familiar tension creeping back into his chest. "What is it, boy?" he asked, kneeling to Roger's level. The dog growled low, a rumble deep within his throat, and Bill followed his gaze to a section of the wall that seemed different from the rest, almost as if it were hiding something beneath its rough exterior. "Guess we ought to check that out," he said, his curiosity piqued. He stepped toward the wall, the stones beneath his boots crunching softly, echoing in the cavern's stillness. With the flickering match illuminating his path, Bill brushed away the dust and debris that clung to the stone, revealing a series of symbols carved deep into the rock. They were similar to the drawings around the cavern, but these were more intricate, their lines flowing like a river over the surface. "Looks like a map," he said, squinting to make out the details. "Or maybe a warning." Roger whined, inching closer, his instincts sensing the weight of the air shift. "Easy there, partner," Bill soothed, ruffling the dog's fur. "Let's see what we're dealing with." He traced the symbols with his fingers, the cool stone contrasting with the warmth of the glowing stones in his pouch. As he studied the markings, a chill swept through the cavern and the whispers crescendoed, urging him on. "What are you trying to tell us?" he asked, though he felt a knot tightening in his gut. Suddenly the cavern trembled, the ground shifting beneath his feet as if the earth itself was responding to his inquiry. Bill staggered, steadying himself against the wall, and Roger barked sharply, alerting him to the danger. "Let's not go stirring up any trouble," he muttered, scanning the shadows. The light flickered as the whispers grew louder, then suddenly fell silent. The calm was deafening. Bill could feel his pulse quicken, his instincts screaming at him to leave, yet he felt anchored to the spot, as if the cavern held him in its grip. "There's something here, Roger," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something we gotta find." With a determined nod, he resumed his examination of the symbols, piecing together the map. It depicted the town above them, but there was something else. A marked spot deep within the layout, a place that seemed to glow with significance. "That's got to be where the heart of this mystery lies," Bill said, his excitement tempered by the fear that coiled in his belly. He turned to Roger, who was now sniffing intently at a pile of rubble nearby. "What have you found, old friend?" Bill asked, moving closer. The dog pawed at the ground, revealing what looked like the corner of an old wooden box, its edges rotted but still intact. "Looks like we struck gold," Bill said, kneeling down to help unearth the box. As he pulled it free, he felt a tingle run through his fingers, a sensation that sent shivers down his spine. "This is it, Roger. Whatever's inside might be what we need to help Evelyn." With care, he pried open the lid, wincing as the hinges creaked like a long-forgotten ghost. Inside lay a collection of weathered papers, their edges yellowed and brittle, along with a small, delicate necklace that caught the cavern's light in a way that made it shimmer. "By the looks of it, this belonged to Evelyn," he breathed, pulling the necklace free. The moment he touched it, the whispers surged back, a wave of voices filling the air with urgency. "Help me find peace," they echoed, and Bill's resolve solidified. He turned to Roger, who was now watching him with an intensity that spoke of understanding. "All right, let's see if we can figure out what all this means," he said, his heart thrumming in rhythm with the growing energy around them. "We'll find you, Evelyn. I promise." The cavern pulsed with anticipation, shadows creeping ever closer, and Bill knew that they were not alone. Whatever mysteries lay ahead, he was ready to face them, armed with the truth of the past and the loyalty of his steadfast companion. As they prepared to delve deeper into the heart of the ghost town, the whispers grew into a haunting melody, guiding them onward through the darkness. The air around them grew thick, almost tangible, as Bill tucked the delicate necklace into his pocket, feeling its cool metal press against his thigh like a promise. The whispers had quieted, leaving behind an eerie stillness that wrapped around him like a shroud. He could sense Roger's unease. The dog stood stock still, ears pricked and nose twitching, catching scents unknown to Bill. "Let's move, boy," Bill said, rising to his feet with the old box cradled in his arms. He took one last look at the symbols etched into the stone wall, their meaning still shrouded in mystery. There's got to be more to this. With Roger leading the way, Bill navigated through the cavern, each step echoing against the rough walls. The dampness of the stone clung to him, and he could almost taste the age of the earth, rich and musty like old leather. The flickering match illuminated the path ahead, but shadows danced just beyond its reach, as if the darkness itself was waiting for him to venture deeper. As they approached the far end of the cavern, Bill spotted another peculiar formation in the stone. It was a hollow, almost like a mouth, that seemed to beckon him closer. "What do you reckon, Roger?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. The dog whined softly, stepping back slightly, sensing the energy thrumming in the air. "Right," Bill muttered. "You're not too keen on this place, are you?" He took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. "Can't let a little spooky air scare us off." He crouched down, examining the hollow. It was lined with crystals that shimmered with an inner light, casting reflections that danced across the walls like spirits in a moonlit graveyard. The sight was both beautiful and unsettling, stirring something deep within him. "Might be a good place to look for more clues," he said, reaching out to touch the surface. As his fingers brushed against the crystals, a jolt of energy shot through him, as if he touched a live wire. The cavern rumbled again, this time more violently, and he could feel the ground shaking beneath him. "Whoa there," he shouted, trying to steady himself. Roger barked, his instinct kicking in, and Bill's heart raced as he scrambled back, pulling away from the hollow. Then in a flash, images flickered through his mind. Faint, disjointed memories of a woman with long, dark hair and sad, haunting eyes. It was Evelyn, and she was calling for him, her voice a whisper on the wind. "We need to help her," he murmured, shaking off the vision as he stood up straight. "But how? Maybe there's something in that box," he said, glancing back at the wooden relic still clutched in his arms. He opened it again, rummaging through the brittle papers, his heart pounding with anticipation. The first few were merely letters, faded and worn, but one caught his eye. It was a map, similar to the one he'd seen earlier but more detailed, with markings that indicated specific locations in the ghost town above. "Now we're getting somewhere," he said, unfolding the paper with care. A small X marked a spot on the map, and a label read, "The Well of Souls." A chill ran down his spine at the name, but Bill's curiosity ignited. That's gotta be it. If we want to find Evelyn, we need to head there. Roger whined again, pacing back and forth, his anxiety palpable. I know, Bill said, understanding the dog's apprehension. But we can't turn tail now. We owe it to her. He carefully folded the map and tucked it alongside the necklace, feeling the weight of their task pressing on his shoulders. As they made their way back toward the entrance, Bill's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. The cavern's exit loomed before them like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. The light outside was dimming, the sun sinking low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched across the barren ground. Emerging into the fading light, Bill took a moment to gather his bearings, the cool evening air brushing against his skin like a whisper from the past. The ghost town stood still and quiet, the remnants of its former life staring back at him, a stark reminder of what once was. All right, Roger, he said, taking a deep breath. Let's find that well. With renewed purpose, they moved through the town, the wooden boards creaking beneath their feet as they passed dilapidated buildings that had long since surrendered to time. The whispers from the cavern still echoed in his mind, and he could almost feel Evelyn's presence guiding him, urging him to uncover the truth. Roger led the way, his nose to the ground, sniffing out scents that Bill couldn't begin to comprehend. The dog paused suddenly, ears perked, as if he had caught a whiff of something otherworldly. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, his heart quickening. The dog growled low in his throat, eyes darting to a shadow that seemed to shift just beyond the crumbling remnants of a saloon. Bill's gut tightened. "Ain't nothing to be scared of," he said, trying to reassure both himself and Roger. "Just a ghost town, right?" But the words felt hollow in his mouth. The air was thick with tension, and he knew that whatever secrets lay hidden in this forsaken place were about to be unearthed. With a determined nod, Bill stepped forward, ready to face the unknown, and as they approached the well, the whispers in his ears rose to a crescendo, a haunting melody promising that the answers he sought were closer than ever. The shadows of the ghost town lengthened, swirling like spirits dancing on the edge of dusk. Bill felt a prickling at the back of his neck, as if the very air around him held its breath in anticipation. With Roger at his side, he approached the well, its stone structure standing resolute despite the years of neglect that had dulled its once proud presence. Moss crept up the sides like nature's attempt to reclaim what had been lost to time, and the wooden lid that covered the well's mouth was warped and splintered, creaking softly in the evening breeze. "Easy now, Roger," Bill whispered, kneeling down to examine the well. He could see the dark moor below, where the stones disappeared into shadow. "Gotta be careful. Ain't no telling what's waiting down there." The dog whined softly, his instincts on high alert. Bill reached out to pat Roger's head, grateful for the companionship that steadied him. "You keep watch, partner. I'll see what I can find." With a deep breath, he leaned over the edge, peering into the darkness. "Hello?" he called, his voice echoing down into the depths. For a heartbeat, nothing answered but silence, thick and heavy, pressing against his ears. Just as he was about to pull back, a soft, rustling sound reached him, followed by a faint, almost musical whisper that sent shivers racing down his spine. "Evelyn?" he called again, hope blooming within him like a desert flower after a rain. The whisper returned, softer this time, mingling with the rustling of leaves above. It sounded almost like a lullaby, a mournful tune that tugged at the edges of his heart. He fished a small lantern from his satchel, struck a match, and watched as the flame flickered to life, casting a warm glow around him. He felt a surge of courage as he dangled the lantern over the well, illuminating the stones far below. They were slick with moisture, and he could see a series of shapes, perhaps stones or something more, crowded together at the bottom. "Looks like there's something down there," he muttered, straightening up. "But I can't just jump in without knowing what's waiting." He turned to Roger, who was still sniffing the air, his ears perked and eyes sharp. "What do you think, boy? Should we take a closer look?" Roger let out a low growl, his body tense, and Bill understood. The dog had a nose for trouble, and right now it was barking loud and clear. "All right, I'll lower the lantern," he decided, just to get a better view. With care, Bill fashioned a makeshift rope from the old frayed length of twine he'd found in the saloon, tying the lantern securely. He steadied himself, taking a deep breath before lowering it into the well. The light danced down the walls, revealing more of the shapes below. As it reached the bottom, Bill could see that they were bones, scattered and weathered, their origins lost to time. His heart dropped like a stone. "This ain't good," he whispered, the reality of what lay beneath him settling like dust in his lungs. He pulled the lantern back up, and as he did, something glinted in the light, something that hadn't been visible until the lantern had illuminated it. "Hold on a sec," he murmured, squinting down as he caught sight of a weathered leather pouch nestled among the bones. He had to know what it contained. "Can't leave without seeing what that is." Bill glanced at Roger, who was now pacing nervously, a low whine escaping his throat. "I know, buddy, but we can't just leave it be." He tied the lantern off to a sturdy post nearby. Then, with a steadying breath, he leaned back over the well, reaching down into the darkness. The smell of damp earth and decay filled his nostrils, but he pressed on, fingers brushing against the pouch. With a firm grip, he pulled it free, feeling a rush of triumph. "Got it!" he exclaimed, hoisting it up to the surface, his heart pounding with excitement. As he sat back, cradling the pouch in his lap, he noticed Roger had gone still, fixated on the entrance of the well. "What you see, boy?" Bill asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. He turned his gaze toward the opening, the last rays of sunlight fading fast, casting eerie silhouettes against the crumbling buildings. Before he could make sense of the dog's sudden stillness, a figure emerged from the shadows. A tall, gaunt man with hollow cheeks and a tattered coat stepped into the fading light, his eyes wide and wild. The air thickened with an unspoken tension, as if the very ground beneath them recognized the presence of something ancient and restless. "Who are you?" Bill asked, voice steady despite the dread pooling in his stomach. The stranger didn't answer, merely stared, his gaze darting from Bill to the well and then back again. "The well is cursed," the man finally rasped, his voice like gravel. "Leave this place, boy. It ain't what it seems." "Cursed," Bill echoed, glancing nervously at Roger, who was growling softly. "What do you mean? I'm here to help someone." The man's eyes widened further, and he stepped closer, though the shadowy dusk swallowed his form. "You're meddling with things beyond your ken. The souls trapped below are restless, and they won't take kindly to intruders. You mustn't dig any deeper." A chill ran through Bill as he clutched the pouch tighter, the weight of the unknown pressing upon him. "I've got to find Evelyn," he said, resolute yet uncertain. "She's trapped here, and I can't just walk away." "Then you're a fool," the man replied, shaking his head slowly. "But fools sometimes find the truth, even when it's wrapped in darkness." As the last vestiges of sunlight disappeared, the air grew heavy with an electric charge, and Bill could feel the ground beneath him thrum with an unseen energy. The man's words hung in the air, weaving a tapestry of warning and intrigue. As Roger growled deep in his throat, a sentinel guarding against the unknown. With the pouch still in hand and a new determination brewing within him, Bill faced the well once more, knowing that the answers he sought were buried deep in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The time for hesitation was gone. He had to dive into the mystery that lay before him, for the sake of Evelyn, for the sake of the souls bound to the secrets of the past, and perhaps even for his own soul's salvation. The night had just begun, and the true test of courage awaited him in the darkness below. As the last gleam of daylight slipped beneath the horizon, the twilight deepened, wrapping the ghost town in a shroud of shadows. Bill felt the weight of the pouch resting against his leg, its presence both reassuring and ominous. He drew a deep breath, steadying himself as he turned his attention back to the well, that yawning mouth of secrets calling him like a siren's song. "Stay close, Roger," he instructed, his voice low and firm. The dog's ears perked up, eyes gleaming in the dim light as he stood sentinel beside Bill, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. It was as if Roger sensed the very air around them was thick with anticipation, the kind that made a man's skin prickle and his heart race. Bill knelt at the edge of the well, peering into the abyss below. The lantern flickered above, casting long shadows that danced like specters on the stone walls. He could hear the faint echo of water dripping somewhere in the depths, a steady reminder of the secrets long submerged. "If there's a chance Evelyn's down there, I've got to find her," he murmured to himself. He pulled the pouch closer, fingers trembling slightly as he worked to open it. The leather was cracked and brittle, but as he pried it apart, his breath caught in his throat. Inside lay a collection of trinkets, a tarnished silver locket, a small rusted key, and a faded piece of parchment. The parchment crinkled as he unfolded it, revealing a sketch of the town as it once was, bustling with life and color. Now a ghostly echo of its former glory. The drawing bore markings, an X drawn in ink, indicating a spot near the old church that stood defiantly against the encroaching darkness. "Well, I'll be," Bill muttered, his heart racing with excitement and fear. "Looks like we ain't finished yet." He stuffed the pouch back into his pocket, casting a quick glance at Roger, who was sniffing the air with keen interest. "What is it, boy?" Bill asked, following the dog's gaze toward the well's opening. Roger's ears stood tall, and he let out a low growl, a sound that rumbled from his chest like distant thunder. The hairs on the back of Bill's neck stood on end. Something was off. "You feelin' what I'm feelin'?" he asked, though he knew the answer. They both sensed it, the presence of something unseen, a force that tugged at the edges of the night. "All right, let's get moving," he said, rising to his feet with determination. "The church is just up the way. Let's see what it's hiding." The path to the church was overgrown and choked with weeds, the remnants of the town's once vibrant life now a mere whisper among the rustling leaves. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting a ghostly glow over the landscape. Bill could almost hear the echo of laughter from days gone by, a stark contrast to the silence that now reigned. As they approached the church, its steeple reaching toward the heavens, Bill's heart beat like a drum in his chest. The heavy wooden door creaked open with a push, revealing a dimly lit interior that smelled of mildew and age. Dust motes danced in the beams of moonlight that streamed through cracked stained glass, casting eerie patterns on the floor. "Let's be careful now," he whispered, stepping inside. Roger trotted at his side, nose to the ground, alert to every sound and scent. Bill moved cautiously, eyes scanning the pews, each one a relic of a time when this place had been filled with the faithful. As he ventured deeper, something caught his eye, a glint beneath one of the pews. He crouched down, brushing aside the dust to reveal a small silver bell, intricately engraved and seemingly untouched by time. A chill crawled up his spine as he picked it up, feeling an odd warmth radiating from the metal. "What do you make of this, Roger?" he asked, holding the bell up to the light. The dog sniffed at it, his expression shifting from curiosity to alertness. "Guess it's a sign, huh?" Bill chuckled nervously, but the laughter quickly faded as he turned the bell over in his hands. The engraving depicted a scene of a woman holding a lantern, surrounded by ghostly figures, souls trapped perhaps, forever wandering this forsaken place. Just then, a whisper echoed through the church, soft and mournful, sending a shiver racing down Bill's spine. "Help! Me! Did you hear that?" he asked Roger, who stared at him with wide eyes. The dog's fur bristled as he growled low, the sound resonating with unease. Bill's pulse quickened. "Evelyn?" he called into the darkness, his voice trembling. "Is that you?" The whisper faded, but the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him, a pressure building in the stillness. "We're here to help," he said, though he wasn't sure if he believed his own words. The bell in his hand vibrated, a soft ringing that echoed through the church, a call to the restless spirits. Bill felt a surge of energy coursing through him, a connection to the past, to the souls trapped by fate. He took a deep breath, steeling himself against the fear threatening to overwhelm him. "Let's go, boy. Whatever's going on here, we're gonna find out," he declared, moving deeper into the church, guided by the strange resonance of the bell and the flickering light of the lantern. The night was far from over, and the truth awaited just beyond the veil of shadows, where the past and present intertwined in a dance of mystery and danger. With every step deeper into the church, the air thickened, almost tangible in its heaviness. Bill felt like he was wading through a fog of secrets. The flickering light from his lantern cast dancing shadows, which seemed to twist and bend as if they were alive, teasing at the corners of his vision. Roger trotted close, his instincts sharp, the dog's nose twitching and ears perked up, ready to catch any sign of trouble or revelation. Bill approached the altar, a worn slab of wood that had once been polished to a high sheen, but was now dulled by years of neglect. Above it hung a crucifix, its figure weathered and cracked. He could almost hear the prayers that had risen here, the hopes that had been whispered into the rafters. The whispers from the darkness still lingered in his mind, and he felt a deep urgency to uncover what lay hidden within these walls. He knelt beside the altar, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath his palm. "All right, let's see what we can turn up," he murmured to himself. Pulling out his pocket knife, he began to pry at the edges of the altar. As he worked, Roger sniffed around the base, his tail twitching with anticipation. Suddenly, Bill's knife caught on something. With a sharp tug, he pulled free a small wooden box, its hinges rusted but intact. "Well, would you look at that?" he said, a grin breaking across his face. He brushed away the layers of dust and opened it, revealing an assortment of items: a faded photograph, a lock of hair tied with a fraying ribbon, and a small, leather-bound journal. "Now we're getting somewhere," he said, his heart racing. The photograph depicted a woman in a long white dress, her face serene, but her eyes held a depth that hinted at sorrow. Bill flipped it over, and written in ink was a name: Evelyn Carter. "Roger, look here," Bill said, showing the dog the picture. Roger sniffed at the photograph, his demeanor shifting from curious to alert, the low growl returning. "Calm down, boy. I reckon she ain't here to bite," Bill reassured, though his own heart felt uneasy. He turned to the journal next, its leather cover cracked with age. As he opened it, the pages crumbled slightly, but the writing inside was still legible. "December 18th, 1873, he read aloud, his brow furrowing as he scanned the words. "The town grows quieter, the shadows gather, and I fear for the souls who linger here. I hear them calling to me, lost and alone. I must help them find peace." Bill's pulse quickened. The journal hinted at a darkness that had settled over the town, but it also held a glimmer of hope, a longing for resolution. "What happened to you, Evelyn?" he whispered, the weight of her sorrow pressing on his heart. The sound of a soft thump echoed from somewhere deeper in the church. Bill froze, the journal slipping from his fingers and landing softly on the floor. Roger's growl deepened, a warning rumble that sent a chill up Bill's spine. "What in tarnation was that?" he murmured, glancing toward the source of the noise. Drawing the lantern closer, Bill made his way toward a door at the back of the church that he had almost missed, a door that appeared to lead to a cellar. The wood was warped, the hinges rusty, but it creaked open under his gentle push. A musty smell wafted up, heavy with the scent of damp earth and forgotten memories. "Stay close, Roger," he said, stepping cautiously down the narrow staircase that descended into darkness. The lantern light flickered against the rough stone walls, casting shadows that danced like spirits caught in a moment of longing. At the bottom, the cellar was a sprawling space, lined with empty barrels and crates, remnants of the church's past. But it was the far wall that caught his eye. A series of strange markings, like symbols etched into the stone, almost glowing in the dim light. Bill approached, his heart pounding in his chest. "What in the world?" he breathed, kneeling to examine the symbols closely. They appeared to tell a story, a tale of souls bound by chains, of a lantern lighting the way to freedom. The imagery mirrored that of the bell he had found, and he felt an eerie connection between the two. Roger sniffed around, his tail low, the dog clearly sensing the weight of something ancient and powerful in the air. Suddenly, the bell in Bill's pocket vibrated again, a soft ringing that sent a shiver down his spine. He pulled it out, feeling its warmth against his palm. "Guess it wants to chime in," he chuckled nervously. But the laughter died on his lips as he felt a presence looming behind him. Turning slowly, he scanned the dim cellar, every instinct on high alert. "Evelyn!" he called out, the name echoing off the stone walls. "Is that you?" For a moment, silence reigned, the kind that pressed against the ears, then a gust of cold wind swept through the cellar, extinguishing his lantern flame. Darkness enveloped him, the sudden absence of light making his heart race. Roger barked sharply, the sound breaking through the oppressive quiet. Bill fumbled for the bell, his fingers trembling as he held it tightly. "We're not afraid," he shouted into the dark, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Show yourself." In that moment of fear, he heard it, a soft, mournful whisper that drifted through the shadows like a forgotten memory. "Help me." The bell began to ring, a sweet, clear sound that filled the cellar with a ghostly resonance, and Bill felt the chill in the air shift, as if the very fabric of the night was bending to his will. Whatever lay hidden in the darkness was drawing near, and with Roger at his side, he braced himself for what was to come. The journey into the heart of the mystery had only just begun, and he was determined to unveil the truth, no matter the cost. The cold grip of darkness wrapped around Bill like a shroud, but the sound of Roger's bark sliced through it, a lifeline in the suffocating silence. The bell still trembled in his grasp, its clear tone cutting through the eerie stillness of the cellar. Bill took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising tide of fear that threatened to drown him. "Help me!" The whisper echoed again, soft yet insistent, a sound that tugged at something deep within him. With renewed determination, Bill focused on the words, letting them guide him. "Show yourself!" he called out again, his voice steadier this time, fueled by the presence of his loyal companion. The air shifted, and he felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him. Suddenly, the lantern flickered back to life, casting a warm glow that dispelled the shadows clinging to the corners of the cellar. And there, against the far wall, a figure began to materialize, a ghostly silhouette that looked almost human, a woman dressed in period clothing. "Evelyn?" Bill asked, stepping closer, the bell still ringing gently in his hand. "Please, help me," she whispered again, her voice carrying the weight of ages past. But before he could respond, Roger took a step forward, sniffing the air as if deciphering the very essence of the apparition. "What is it, boy?" Bill said, glancing down at the dog, who had suddenly gone rigid, his body tense with focus. Roger let out a low growl, the kind that spoke of instinct honed over years of companionship. Then it hit Bill like a bolt of lightning. "Wait a minute, this ain't no ghost," he muttered, realization dawning on him. The woman's form flickered slightly, revealing a faint outline, more like a projection than a true spirit. "This is a trick." He turned his attention back to the markings on the wall, and with a swift motion, he wiped away some dust that had settled in the crevices. The symbols were not ancient runes, but cleverly carved designs, a mechanical mechanism behind the illusion. "Roger, stay close," he said as he moved toward the wall, examining it more closely. He could feel the excitement bubbling within him, the thrill of discovery urging him on. "Evelyn!" Bill called out again, his voice ringing with authority. "You're not lost, are you? You're part of this hoax." The figure flickered again, and with a sudden surge, a trapdoor behind the apparition swung open, revealing a hidden passage. Bill's heart raced. He rushed forward, his mind racing with the implications of what he'd just uncovered. "Let's see who's behind this," he said, and with Roger at his side, he climbed into the passage. The dark tunnel led them into a small room, dimly lit, but filled with tools and various contraptions. There, amidst the clutter, stood a man in dusty clothes, a smirk plastered on his face, his eyes glinting with malice. "Fancy meeting you here, Bill," he sneered, the illusion of Evelyn dissipating into the air. "Thought you'd come snooping around my little show." "Clyde," Bill said, a mixture of anger and disappointment bubbling up. "I should have known it was you pulling the strings in this ghost town." Clyde had been a local hustler, known for his tricks and schemes. He'd concocted the entire ruse to scare unsuspecting newcomers into believing the town was haunted, making them pay for guided tours or selling them haunted trinkets. "People are gullible when it comes to ghosts," he said with a laugh, "and it pays well. You've scared folks half to death, and for what? A few coins," Bill said, stepping closer, Roger growling low beside him. "You've no idea the fear you've instilled in this town's memory." Clyde shrugged, unfazed. "Fear sells, Bill. Besides, it was easier than working an honest day." With a quick glance at Roger, Bill took a deep breath. "You're done, Clyde. It's time for you to face the music." Mudu. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the stairs, and Bill knew the town's sheriff was on his way. Clyde's smirk faltered, and he started to back away. But Roger, ever vigilant, darted ahead and blocked his path, barking ferociously. "You think you can just walk away?" Bill said, his voice steady and firm. "Not this time. You'll answer for what you've done." As the sheriff entered, Lantern light spilling into the room, Clyde's bravado crumbled. "I didn't mean any harm," he stammered, eyes wide with fear. The sheriff, a tall figure with a no-nonsense demeanor, surveyed the scene. "Clyde, what have you gotten yourself into now?" Bill stepped aside, pointing at the mechanisms and the remnants of Clyde's deceit. "He's been scaring folks out of their wits with this charade. Time for him to learn that there are consequences." With Roger's low growl still resonating in the background, Clyde was taken into custody, and the sheriff nodded in appreciation to Bill. "You've done good here, Bill. This town's been plagued long enough." As Clyde was led away, Bill felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The townsfolk would now be free of fear, and perhaps they could finally start healing from the shadows of the past. "Come on, Roger," he said, ruffling the dog's fur. "Let's get out of this forsaken place and head for the sunset." Together, they stepped out of the cellar into the warm glow of the evening sun. The town, now bathed in light, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Bill smiled, heartened by the thought that they had righted a wrong. "Adventure awaits," he said, looking down at Roger, whose tail wagged with enthusiasm. They headed toward the horizon, ready for whatever lay ahead. The bond of their friendship stronger than any ghost story ever told.